But for 14 years would pass before, you know, answers to what took place back in 1962 during the Operation Dominic. It would come to light at Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Okay, 14 years I was assigned there. Okay, now it's really weird how I met. I knew the chief was part of the dry dock or ships repair department, but our paths never crossed because he was like on the other side of the dry dock. His crew, he was in charge of a small group of men, divers, who would, you know, not salvage divers at that point. They would go and check the hulls of ships that would come into Guantanamo to see if, you know, if they needed cleaning or needed to go into dry dock or whatever.
David, can I just stop you?
Yeah.
David, can I just stop you for a second? Is there any noise on the line, or is my voice clear?
Yeah, your voice is very clear.
There's no noise.
I think maybe mine's getting kind of hoarse because you know, I've been talking for so long.
Okay, continue. So the story gets more interesting because you tell us that years later at Guantanamo Bay, you never got any information about this object. You signed something saying you wouldn't talk about it, and years later, how does the story continue from here?
Well, it's really strange how I knew of the chief. I'd seen him at quarters in the morning. You call it quarters, where different departments line up and they have kind of a quick inspection, check your hair, check your shoes, you know. And the different departments, you're set out on the compound, so you really don't know people in the other departments, but you see them. And the Master Chief, you know, he's got nearly 30 years in the military. You know, he's big and brawly. You know, smokes a cigar when he's not holding inspection. You know, he's the typical chief. You know, Master Chief. And so anyway. I don't know if I want to get into any detail of how I exactly met him, but we would spend a lot of time drinking at the Enlisted Men's Club and at the Chief's Club. We just wouldn't go to the Officers' Club because you weren't allowed to patronize with the officers. But the chiefs and the enlisted, whether you were a Marine or a sailor, and this is before Gitmo became, you know, a prison for, you know, terrorists. So it was kind of like an open area, except for the minefield that bordered Gitmo to keep the Cubans and those who wanted to go AWOL, you know, to protect our borders at Gitmo. But we would drink a lot, we'd party a lot, and it was at one of these parties, at one of these parties that I happened upon where the chief was drinking, and in a rowdy bar, you know, a bunch of military people, there's like 100 guys to one female military person. We got nothing better to do but to party. And I saw a small group at the end of the bar, a group of men sitting around and yelling and screaming, you know, cheering on. And so I moseyed on over to what was going on. I hadn't even had a drink in my hand. And then it became very quiet. And as I got up to the table, the Master Chief, what was happening is he slammed his head on the table. And I thought, God, this guy is really drunk. You know, is this what 30 years does to you? You know, because I knew that there was a celebration because he was retiring in a couple of weeks, and I thought this might be one of his farewell beer busts for all the enlisted guys who knew him. But what he did, he had a popular trend that if you put 3 quarters on the top of a table and he slammed his head so hard on the table that it would flip the coins, you would have to buy him drinks all night. So that's what the bet was, and that's what the cheering was when I arrived at that particular scene. And I seen him flip the coins, and he didn't pass out. And he had been drinking all afternoon. So after he had a few drinks and everybody was fanning out, everybody was going to their own group, you know, a bunch of guys going to their own cliques, you know. The chief was sitting there by himself and everything, and I wanted to get to know him, you know, because he was a shipmate, and I hadn't I hadn't quite reached his level of intoxication. So we just started rambling, and he was rambling more than me. And these little get-togethers, you know, it's scuttlebutt. It's all scuttlebutt. It's like, you know, and I don't want to talk about Navy talk, but anyway, he was a hardcore diver, and he had some sea stories, and he wanted to give his sea story. And so I just nonchalantly says, 30 years, Chief, what are you going to do when you get out? You know, what the heck are you going to do? He says, I'm going to write my book. In a slurry, drunken state, he said, I'm going to write my book. And I said, what book? He said, I'm going to write a book of what I saw and what I engaged in, you know, 14 years ago. And I said, what was that? He says, oh, you don't want to hear about it. I said, yeah, come on, Chief. And, you know, all of a sudden the noise and the rowdiness and all the crap going around the table became, in my mind, silent, because I had to get close to hear him mumble what he was saying. He says, I'm going to write my great American novel on a bogey or a UFO that we attempted to salvage in the South Pacific around the end of Operation Dominic. And I said, what? What? Am I hearing right? Am I hearing right? Okay. And I said, hey, Chief, I said, you don't know me, but we're in the same division. I said, if I come into your office one day this week before you retire and I mention this conversation, will you remember me? And he looked up at me. He says, I'm not that drunk. Okay. So that was the end of the conversation. And, you know, I put it in the back of my mind. And then one day, it was just a week or so before he was going to retire, the flyer or poster was going around that he is going to have a barbecue at his home for you know, a farewell barbecue for anybody that wanted to go in attendance, you know, and you know, housing, military housing, everybody shared the same cockroach, you know, dwellings. It didn't make any difference if you're an officer or enlisted. They were all matchboxes, you know, ready to go up in flames. And they'd been there since World War II. So it was a big event, you know. I mean, something to do on Guantanamo. You know, you're not going to the bar, you're going to somebody's house to drink, right? So I moseyed on over there by myself, and he was not inebriated, but he had already turned a few steaks and hot dogs, and he was sitting down. And when I approached him, you know, I was the only one that he got my attention. He says, hey, he says, aren't you so-and-so working at SRD at the engraver shop? And I said, yeah, that's me. He said, you thought I forgot you, huh? He says, come with me. So he got up slowly, and then we went into his bedroom, and it was really packed with boxes and shit he was putting together, you know. And he had one box that hadn't been sealed yet, you know, for the movers to come and pick up. Somewhere in between this conversation, I had asked, well, how many days you got left, you know? And I don't recall what he said. But he opened the box, and it was filled to the top with binders and loose leaf papers and all kinds of stuff, you know. And he said, this is the material I was talking about at the club that I'm going to put my story together. And I said, hey, Chief, can you just give me kind of the short version? Real short. I want to get the drink. That was in my mind. I didn't say it, but that's what I wanted, you know. So he began to tell me the story about when he was a second-class diver in Pearl Harbor back in 1962. And his group was called away on a top-secret mission 200 miles south of Pearl Harbor, or I don't know if he said that exactly, but he said in the vicinity where a air vessel had gone down. He said air vessel had gone down. And his troop didn't have a need to know until they got underway, meaning out of Pearl Harbor, a few nautical miles out, before they would get the exact location. He didn't say how many were in this group, but he said it was a full complement of divers, chiefs, enlisted men, etc., him included. And he was a hard hat diver. You know, hard hat. That's when they had that Bible headgear with heavy canvas you have to slip into, you know, with cables and stuff. I mean, they had advanced diving equipment, but he's what you call a gopher in second class. You get to go first, okay? So I mean, he's ready, he's eager, he's young, he can do it, right? So they get out on station. They're not told what to look for. They gear him up, okay? They gear him up. He still doesn't know what to look for. He's just given instructions. He get taps on the head, and they told him, okay, when you get overboard and you hit bottom, we just want you to observe, okay? And we're going to tell you where to look. We're going to tell you, because sonar had already picked up this object, I guess, and they already had the coordinates or whatever it was. So he goes over the side, and he doesn't tell me how many fathoms it is or whatever, but he describes when he hits the bottom of the sea floor. He's looking around, and they give him some lamps, and I don't know what kind of power lamps, candle lights they give him, but anyway, he's flashing it around, and he doesn't realize it. He tells me that his back is to whatever he's looking for, and doesn't realize it. Okay, he doesn't realize his back is to the object he's supposed to be searching for. So he does this 360 ocean slow turn, and what he faces, he almost loses it. He can't believe the size of this thing, and he thought that when he hit the bottom, that the light of the ocean, because it was a clear day, you could see for depths. I mean, in the Pacific, believe me, where there's no pollution during that period of time, you could see pretty far. Okay, yeah. But he thought he had gone down in a canyon or something, in a crevasse, and what he was looking at was the edge of this crevasse that was blocking out the sun shimmering from the surface. But as he got closer, he realized that this was not natural coral. This was not the side of a cliff down below, okay, or a ravine. And I can't give you the right description, but this is how I received his conversation. And when he got close to it, he reported aboard, with whatever communication system they had, that he wanted to come up, that for whatever reason, he did not want to be down there. And they gave him instructions to get close to it, to touch it, kick it, whatever you got to do, and come up and report to us. Yeah. Report to us what it is. And so he said that he put his hand out. He put his hand out to touch it, and his hand went inside of it. And as soon as his hand went inside of it, he thought that it was going to suck him in. It didn't pull him in, but he got really, really nervous. Okay? And this is something they teach you and they train you because of sharks, seals, porpoises, curiosity mammals. They teach you how to control yourself because you're going to see live things down there, hammerheads, whatever. But he lost it. I mean, he was really scared. And as soon as his hand went in, he was telling me it was kind of like Jello, but at the same time, it felt like a giant jellyfish. And when his hand went in, as he was pulling his whole arm from the elbow out, the thing lit up. I mean, he said this gigantic, whatever it was, lit up and started to pulsate with light. It lit up the whole sea bottom. It lit up the whole sea bottom. And he skirmished his arm out of there, and he panicked. He went into panic mode. So they hauled him up, and he doesn't talk about, he has to, what do they call it, pause halfway going up and everything so he doesn't get that sickness, motion, whatever they call it.
The bend, yeah, the bend.
When you deep dive, yeah, the bends and stuff. But he got up there, and when they removed his brass helmet and everything, he had puked all over himself. I mean, it was really bad. And so they didn't take him out. They did not take him out of the suit. They said, you got to go down one more time.
You're going down again. Okay.
Yeah. He said, you got to go down again, and he says, over my dead body. So all of this is taking hours. I'm not talking about the 5 minutes I'm describing it to you. The chief is telling me this took hours. the boat they're on is rocking, you know, and there's you have to take care of the equipment, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and there's picket ships or other ships circling the perimeter of this salvage boat, and so anyway, he actually said he had to be airlifted. He had to be airlifted. They had one of those old-fashioned seaplanes, Navy seaplanes that came down and picked his ass up and took him to Pearl Harbor and put him in the hospital. And, you know, he stayed there long enough for some of his shipmates to come and visit him. And what they told him is secondhand. And by the time it reached me, it's fourth and fifth hand, I guess. But what they told him, and they were bound, like I was, under penalty of prison and forfeiture of your salaries, that if they revealed anything that happened after he was evac to Pearl Harbor Hospital, military hospital, that they were in deep trouble. But they whispered to him that after they had taken him off, the following day they were still on station. They had set buoys on this thing, that they had marked it. They had set down sonar monitoring devices. There were submarines off station taking soundings. There were ships taking soundings. He said the flotilla out there was unimaginable. And he said when they had like 5 or 6 divers go in to inspect this, and they came up, they had finally measured this thing, and he said it was huge. It was if not longer than an aircraft carrier. Okay, and he said it was cylindrical, and that's all he was able to get out, or he was informed. And and he says, and he wanted to know, well, what were they trying to do? They were trying to figure out. They were bringing professionals how to bring this thing up, or how to cut it in two, or how to salvage it. But before they could actually remove it, he had to kind of imagine or make up a story based on just the fragmented pieces he was able to pull together from his shipmates. Okay, that most of them were being shipped out. Most of his shipmates who made the initial discovery, when she was part of, they were all getting transferred to different locations throughout the United States and abroad. And so what he was able to piece together, he told me, was this thing at night, and he didn't give a time, but under the cover of darkness in a clear night, this thing glowed with effervescence to a point where the whole ocean lit up like a neon light bulb or tube, and it rose above the surface slowly, and slow enough to allow the surrounding ships to pull away without falling, being disturbed in a way that they would capsize. And we're talking about escort destroyers and destroyers and other ships in the vicinity that was monitoring this thing with all kinds of devices. And he said it moved so fast under the sea surface without causing great waves. And it went out of sight. It went out of sonar reach. They could not locate it. They couldn't find it.
Wow.
And that's what he was given. Okay. Now, anybody out there listening, that they can have their own, make their own imagination. But I'll tell you something. Some years later, they made a movie about it. Was called The Orb, and I think that, remember that movie, The Orb? I forget who starred in it. I think it's taken from that incident. I think somehow something leaked out, and that movie, The Orb, was created with a big change in the script. But
David, did you say that did the Master Chief go down a second time or not? He wouldn't go down again?
No, he didn't. They demanded, they said, you're going to lose your second class rank. You don't follow orders. but he went into a psychological, physical relapse.
Yeah,
he went into relapse. Yeah, he went into relapse. He said at one time some people from high up in the government interviewed him while he was still in the hospital, and they wanted to know what happened when he put his hand inside the hull or of this thing, or whatever it was. So he had to give them, the best he could. The same description I gave you to them. I don't know. It's probably more detailed.
Did you mention before that he saw movement inside?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I left that out. He saw shadows.
Moving shadows.
Yeah, what appeared to be humanoid type figures, but no detail. Yeah, no detail.
That was exactly what you said. That was exactly what you said a year ago. Humanoid shadow, no details. And he sort of had a nervous breakdown about it, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why he went to the hospital.
He had a nervous breakdown. From my point of view, listening to the chief, if I was in his shoes, I would fake it. I wouldn't want to go back out there. I would not want an assignment like that again. Okay? And, there's all kinds of things people do for their Navy career.
David, is it possible that some of these other divers that went down, you said there might have been 5 or 6 other divers, would they still be alive?
I have no idea. I've made no attempt to see if there are anybody talking about it. But I'll tell you what, if the CIA is in charge, believe me, you're not going to get iota out of anybody, because they don't pay you off, they take you out. Okay, and if you're career minded, or you're an innocent, naive sailor like I was on the Finch, and you have a family. My God, I was already married. At 18. And what's the worst thing I would want happen to me or my wife if this thing came out? There's no way that she could survive without my paycheck, which wasn't very much. So there's a lot of things, not included in my story that controlled my behavior and my thinking to reveal what I know today.
Yeah, you're revealing it now, and without saying anything specific that you don't want to. Did you ever have contact with the Master Chief again after that time at his house, or do you prefer not to comment?
Well, I have to comment because it's part of the entire story.
Okay, go ahead.
True story. Okay, and so for many years, I've really contemplated what the heck really happened on Gitmo. Okay, what really happened? And the chief had about a week. He had about a week before full retirement, and a few days, maybe less than a week, maybe 5 or 6 days before he was due to retire, he got electrocuted in the bathroom and died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He died by electrocution. And here's the other kicker. He had a personal yeoman. You know what a yeoman is? A yeoman is somebody who's like your secretary. When you get to be that high in rank in those days, you have your own yeoman. Okay?
I see.
And he had revealed to his yeoman, according to the chief, what the chief had told me, that the yeoman was typing up a transcript based on all the loose leaf papers and binders and sketches that he had made to make some sense of it, so that when he got out and retired, he could at least do an outline of his story. Okay? So if anybody knew as much as he did about the story, it was this yeoman, right?
Yeah.
And get this. The yeoman was housed in the same barracks I was, but he was always quiet. He was always a person. He was kind of what you call a nerd today. And the last time I saw him, we were both taking a shower at the same time, and I wanted to discuss the Master Chief's book before he left in a couple of days. But the kid, he wanted to go. He had one of the very first skateboards that came out, and believe it or not, he died also a couple of days before the chief died He got in an accident going up a hill on Gitmo with his skateboard.
They both.
I have always. Yeah, he died too. I always found that kind of strange. You know.
They both.
Anybody. I'm sorry.
Yeah. They both died within a few days of each other at Gitmo.
Yeah. Now, anybody, you know, if you can get in there, if a person wants to do the research and go, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. It won't take a record of science, you know, get the what do you call it, the paper, the government paper for revealing, you know,